I know from sociology and psychology that your present state of mind impacts how you tell a story from your past. I mean, this isn't even debated in those circles. So you can, people sometimes are shocked because somebody will tell the same story about the same event, and it sounds like they're like, wait a minute, the last time you said this, it was something totally different, right? But what science has discovered is that where you are at the time you're telling the story impacts how you then interpret the data and your experience in your head. So you'll change your story, but it's really you're changing your perspective,
Yeah.
right? If you would have asked those guys what had happened within 8 hours of that event, they would have all told your cousin's story,
Oh, yeah.
right? Then you get time between it, and then they get on the other side of it. The fear is gone, the paranoia is gone, the I saw my life flash in front of my eyes is all gone now, and I'm feeling really, like pretty good about myself. And then suddenly now the story all shifts, and you get another whole different perspective. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's a psychology thing, and so that's people don't understand that. I mean, it gets frustrating, particularly where you'll see it as in families. That's and I think everybody that's listening will understand what I'm talking about, because you can talk about Christmas in 1965, and you'll if you're a family of five, you'll get five different stories about what that Christmas looked like, right? Or what happened, or the Thanksgiving fight of 1984. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, it's what I mean. It's just it's just that's what I think we talked about this last time. Perception, perspective, paradigm. Right? Our senses. We see things that data gets put into our brain, but then there's filters that it goes through, and how we then interpret that data. Right?
Yeah. It's very
And so that's
complicated.
why it happened with Mike was the filter he had in 1982, right? Was wait a minute, I felt something, and this is what I felt. God told me. I mean, it was all an impression. Bring Bob Jones, Paul Kane, all these prophetic guys into the mix, and suddenly his perspective shifts. And so
Yeah.
now he's telling the same story through this whole prophetic thing, and now it's all of a sudden God, the inaudible voice of God, or whatever, however he tells the story now, right? But everything's exaggerated. So there's a situation right now that a lot of people have been talking about, which is kind of interesting. IHOP bought some land not far from it that was once owned by the Truman family.
Wow.
And this whole thing is so interesting because, Harry Truman, because of the fact that he was the one that basically told in the UN, it's like voting for the statehood of Israel, and the Jewish people have always been very grateful for him, that somehow Harry Truman is this saint. Like he's Saint Harry Truman, right? Because he was the one that it was during his administration that Israel became a nation. So out of that, there's all these things that have been extrapolated. So now this farmland that is father owned in Grandview, Missouri, somehow is got a special destiny on it. No, I'm just saying it's sort of it. You see how where this stuff goes? It's like we're so desperate for something to mean something that suddenly now this farmland that Harry Truman farmed when he was a kid with his family, they bought it from the Jewish family that owned it, and now they're all waiting to, and Mike's going to have this great big comeback, and this land is going to be, because it's God's land and it's consecrated and it's right. This whole drama now around this piece of land. It gets crazy. It's
It's
just
it's crazy.
no, but I'm just saying it's like it's like everything has to mean something more than what it is. So one of the things, getting back to the whole Bob Jones thing, here's something that really bothered me. So Bob Jones comes to the church, right? And suddenly, Bob's, Bob spends so much of his time telling people how he got his, I had this dream, but everything was parabolic, right? It was like, I had this dream about this pumpkin and blah, 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 and then we did this and the seeds inside, right? And anyways, and then out of that, there was this spiritual interpretation of what it meant. Well, suddenly, and this is what's so fascinating, was we were a church of so many young wannabes that suddenly now everybody wants to talk and be Bob Jones, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm in a community of 1,500 to 2,000 people, and like a huge portion of them can't carry on a conversation with you in ordinary human terms. It's like, you walk into the church, well, I had a dream about you in the pumpkin patch and blah, 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 right? But it's just like, and then, well, I saw the number 13 and it was here and it means, right? And so it was like every conversation was into this realm of trying to interpret these weird dreams and visions and numbers and, right? And that really bothered me, because it's like we forgot how to just be human.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the whole thing about Christianity is our love for one another and our humanity and caring for each other. And suddenly our whole culture became this weird world of dreams, visions, revelations, numerology. Nothing meant what it was.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is everything had to mean something else. And it was the spiritually elite who could interpret it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really hit me as I was beginning to make my exit. We were so caught up into the spiritual ecstasy, trying to look for things that weren't there. Numbers, I can't tell you how many. If I saw 3 doves, I was like, oh, it's a sign from God. Or if 13, 12, all of these weird numbers, you're like, oh my gosh, God is speaking to me because I can do simple math in my head. And I started to realize, man, this is not the way it's supposed to be. We're losing touch with reality. And I think that's really the problem for people who've never been in this, and they look on the outside, they see all of these people as, lying through their teeth or whatever, and to some extent, maybe they are, but it's more complicated than that. These people are so caught up in this hype and this, like you called it a drug, it has the effects of a drug on your head. So they're caught up in this, and what they end up with is not reality, but to them, it's very real. So on the outside, you're looking at this fantasy world, and they're living in the fantasy world.